The battles over ballots continues and the Big Ten's end reverse. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Gene Krebs, former state legislator, Julie Carr Smythe, State House correspondent for the Associated Press, and Joseph Mas of the Ohio Hispanic Coalition. This is not a normal election. We have a pandemic. We have a divisive incumbent president. A lot is different this cycle, but one thing remains the same here in Ohio: court battles over how to vote. All of the current controversies involve casting mail-in ballots, the preferred choice of many this cycle for obvious reasons. Courts and lawmakers are debating paying for postage for mail-in ballots. They're arguing over whether to install extra drop boxes for early voting ballots and whether voters can email or fax their early ballot applications. And of course, this is all happening just weeks before early voting begins. Julie Carr Smythe, is there any thread to why these things have not been settled? Why don't we just pay for the postage, put a couple boxes, extra boxes around the county, and let people apply for a ballot online? Why is this always an issue?
Well, there is a thread in the sense that most of these items were things that Frank LaRose, our Secretary of State, was pushing to get resolved earlier in the season. And not that he has agreed in everything that is happening in the courts, for sure, but what has happened is they pushed back, they delayed it in the legislature. The Republicans didn't want a lot of these things. And then, of course, we had the householder scandal and a lot of other distractions. And so now we see that that here we are 2.5 weeks before voting starts, and we don't have resolution.
Joe Mas, is this just maneuvering, or could this really have an impact on the voting? Ohio's had mail-in voting for a long time. We've had, we're used to this. We're not like New York that's never had it before. Some states are getting used to it for the first time. We've had it before. Do you think it'll really have an impact?
Yeah, no, I think it can certainly have an impact. And I read Judge Frye's decision. And by the way, I think anyone of the judges of the Common Pleas Court would have issued a similar decision, because he went back and looked at the history of the having the available boxes, drop-off boxes, and so on. And something that has happened before, by the way. And then the ultimate conclusion was that it's mandated that there be one, but not prohibitive that there be more than one. And as a consequence of that, then that was allowed. But in a close election, man, just everything matters. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Gene, why does it always seem, objectively speaking, it's the Republicans who don't want to loosen things up? They claim they fear fraud, they fear confusion, they fear uniformity across the state, that one county is treated differently than another county. But it always seems like the Republicans want to make it more difficult to vote.
And I'm baffled by this, because if you compare the demographics associated with the more progressive end of the voting electorate, the millennials, they're not going to have any trouble filling out these forms and getting stuff around. But for Republicans, the demographic is that as a group, we're much older. And so therefore, we think that we want to go ahead and make it as easy for them as possible to vote by mail, vote by absentee, do a direct drop off to the courthouse, or a mailing box, to a drop-in box anywhere near your community. I think that sometimes the Republicans overthink these issues, and we end up hurting our own long-term interests on something like this politically.
Gene, is it just a matter of turnout, that the fewer voters that turn out, especially perhaps in this election, the better chance Republican candidates have to win?
Well, which voters too? This may be the third cycle that we will lose the college-educated voter. If so, that's very, very dangerous for us, because as was explained to me by Public Opinion Strategies in 1994, that we were going to be in good shape for a while because the college educated voter voted all the way down the ballot. So they voted for state reps, state senators, county commissioners, all the way down. And for us to lose them is, I think, one of the untold, unsung stories in all this, that how devastating this voting trend could be for us as these things move forward. So when you ask me, how are the voters going to be doing this? We've lost now what I call the Bourbon Democrats, also known as the Reagan Democrats. Okay.
Yeah.
From being from being Democrats, now they're back to being Republicans again. But we've lost now the college educated, so it's going to play its way out in different communities all across the state.
Julie Carr Smyth, there's still some other issues out there, matching signatures. There's still lawsuits out there as far as how closely the signatures must match, because your signature must match both in your application for an absentee ballot and the ballot itself must match the signature that's on file. And there's some concern that that could be a problem in the weeks ahead.
Right. There are so many issues that the more difficult it is to cast your ballot. And in our state, it is quite cumbersome. I mean, they did deliver you, if you were already pre-registered, you did get a ballot application, but you have to get that back in, then you have to get the ballot back, then you have to get it back, meet these various criteria. And so I think that all that is there. And to Jean's point, the arguments against the postage paid ballot on Monday were pretty disingenuous. I mean, they were saying on the controlling board, a couple of them, we don't want these kind of erratic changes too close to an election. Well, number one, it was the legislature who delayed talking about these issues in the first place. Number two, they had LaRose right there in the meeting saying, I'm telling you as the chief elections officer that we have enough time to do these stamps. We can get them out, we can get them, and it goes to every single person. So it wasn't going to be patchwork, which is another one of the Republicans' concerns, that particularly if you look at a big county like Cuyahoga, they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of Democrats, they have a lot of population, and they want to put numerous drop boxes up there. They want to put them at libraries, for example, and allow people to turn those ballots in. And so you have to ask yourself, is it policies that are benefiting urban areas that the Republicans oppose?
Yeah, the question with the postage is that you have to read the instructions to figure out how many stamps to put on the envelope to return your ballot, because some counties, some jurisdictions, some cities may have a lot of levies or a lot of issues, and they might have more pages. It might be more than one stamp to send it back. It just seemed like the controlling board, that small panel of lawmakers, kind of just punted it away, didn't want to deal with it. And of course, there was some seat trading there to keep it from passing. Joe Mas, how many boxes should there be in, say, a Franklin County? Because right now, someone on the south side has to go up to Morse Road to drop off their ballot if they want to use one of these drop boxes. And if they don't have a car, they got to take a bus. How many boxes should there be in
I want to answer. I want to tell you two things in answer to that. I think that probably using the public libraries would be an excellent option for that, so that the number would correspond to that. But I think that the real target for the restrictions or the apparent restrictions to voting is that part of the vulnerable Democratic likely voter population that doesn't vote in every election, that they have to be excited to vote. And if enough roadblocks are in the way or enough confusion or uncertainty, they're likely not to vote. And unfortunately, that oftentimes falls within the minority population and the poor population. We have not developed the discipline that Republicans have developed over the past few years.
All right. For the first time in weeks, a presidential candidate will visit Ohio. In past cycles, both major candidates would make weekly visits, but not this cycle. President Trump will, though, hold airport rallies in Dayton and Toledo next week. As of now, we don't know when Joe Biden might visit the Buckeye State. Even though polls show Ohio is a toss-up, both campaigns are focusing much of their attention on Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, not so much here in Ohio. Gene Krebs, you talked about your concerns about college-educated voters. You live in far western Ohio, out near the Indiana border. What's the average voter out there thinking? This is Trump territory out there. Are they as excited as they were in 2016 to vote for him?
Yes, absolutely, positively, except for the small number that went to college. There seems to be an increasingly educational divide in this, where if you went to college, you're more likely to vote for or not be enamored, with the Republican nominee. It's an interesting thing to see. I do know that in talking to them, though, they are adamant about this, and it's even though bled into how they perceive our governor. That on recent polling, DeWine only has a negative rating of 22%. I think that this is all my neighbors and relatives out here, because in talking to them, I have been stunned on the vehemence of how they feel towards our governor. And I think what it comes down to is if a Republican is not completely and totally supportive of every aspect of everything that Trump does, they then view that Republican with suspicion. And the higher up the food chain you are, the more they want you to adhere more closely to what it is that Trump is talking about and doing at that time. And DeWine and Trump, let's face it, have a different attitude towards masks.
Yeah.
And this has been a real problem out here.
Yeah, Mike DeWine got a shout out this week from Vice President Mike Pence when he was in Zanesville. Pence gave him a really big shout out and said, "Let's hear it from Mike DeWine." And the response was tepid at best, and there were even a few boos in the audience. Julie Carr Smythe, speaking of masks, Mike DeWine, perhaps not wanting to anger Trump supporters, is not going to mandate masks at the Trump rallies. And of course, these rallies will be larger than 10 people. They won't be separated like the football fans were in Cleveland this week.
And we've seen in some other states, it's a difficult walk for a Republican governor when the president wants to come and bring a gathering. Obviously, as the governor of the state of Ohio and the titular head of the party, he wants the Republican president to win re-election. And Mike DeWine is in a real tough spot there because he's been one of the early leaders in coming out with wearing masks and being very consistent about it. He's been super adamant on safety precautions for journalists at his briefings and et cetera. And so I think that it once again looks like he's had to kind of make a pragmatic decision here.
Yeah, I mean, he says the First Amendment, but you're the First Amendment. The reporters of the First Amendment. They can't even be in the same room as the governor right now. Of course, he's in his home in near Dayton right now. Anyway, Joe Mas, should Joe Biden be campaigning more in Ohio? It's a toss-up. We're always the bellwether. Are you worried that he's writing off Ohio too quickly? Somebody else did that back in 2000. Al Gore did it in 2000.
He certainly can't make it seem as if he's writing off Ohio. And I don't think that he is, but it's really hard to balance out the, hey, stay safe at home in your basement like I'm doing right now, and then get out and try to conduct a traditional campaign. He was down in Florida this week, and I'm sure that there are 49 other states that are asking the same exact question: when is he going to come around? And it's a tough answer. Let me add something. Let me piggyback something as to what Julie was talking about. It was really interesting because the polling in support of Governor DeWine was running at about 83% in favor when he was actually advancing the most draconian, the most strict policies with respect to masks and all of the cautions relative to COVID-19. And then since he softened up, since he has given up on some of these mandates, the approval has gone down significantly. I forget where it stands right now, but it may be 53%, something like that.
Yeah, I think it could be also people are really just sort of getting tired of this whole thing too, and kind of mad at everybody at this point. Joe, while Well, you mentioned Florida. One of the reasons why Joe Biden went to Florida is because Democrats are concerned about the Latino vote in Florida.
Yeah.
They say that the former vice president is not doing enough to court that vote. What's the attitude of Latinos in Ohio and other states? Is it the same as in Florida?
It wouldn't be because the demographics in Ohio are totally different than in Florida. In Florida, you're dominated by people who are refugees, the children or grandchildren of refugees from socialist countries, primarily Cuba, Venezuela, for example. And then you have a significant number of conservatives from Puerto Rico that have settled in the Orlando area. That is a tough nut to crack. And I have written on this, and I have spoken on the phenomenon of the Cuban population, but it has become a tradition. All you have to do is just vaguely mention that the opposition is socialist or socialist leaning or have any instincts along those lines, and you're going to have support for the more conservative candidate. As a matter of fact, Gene and I had lunch some years ago and discussed exactly that issue. And inherently, even among the Mexican American population, you do have a conservative direction. Mm-hmm. So Trump's alleged comments concerning Hispanics not voting for him because they're too dumb to do so may be misguided.
Yeah. All right, the biggest news in the fight against COVID-19 this week was the Big Ten Conference's discovery of new medical information. The information and perhaps pressure from coaches, players, fans, and politicians prompted the Big Ten to revive its football season, the season it basically canceled back in August. University leaders say they have a plan to keep players and the community safe.
We're in a better place regardless of how we got here or how painful it was during the time that we waited to get to this moment. That's all behind us. What's beautiful is that we have a process and protocols in place that's based upon science, that's based upon lessons learned since August 11th.
Among the new practices learned since August 11th, the daily antigen testing of players and coaches. If a player tests positive, he will have to sit for 3 weeks. Teams with a 5% positivity rate or higher will stop playing. If a community's positivity rate tops 7.5%, the team will stop playing. Oh, and no fans in the stadiums. Julie Carr Smythe, President Trump said the Big Ten should play. Other politicians were hoping they would play. How much did politics play in this role, do you think?
I have to say that it did play a role for sure because when the president of the United States makes a call to the commissioners, whatever, and basically bullies them a little bit into something they didn't do. And we had our own Attorney General come out last week and say that he thought that Ohio State had a good case of contract breach against the Big Ten. If that was the way they wanted to go, he would love to represent them in that case. So he's also a Republican, of course, and I believe that, the Big Ten was much more interesting to President Trump than the Pac-12. The Big Ten happens to, in a lot of swing states, Ohio, Michigan, et cetera, Pennsylvania. 10 is out on the West Coast where they're mostly Democrats. And so he hasn't really made such a big issue around.
Yeah, when President Trump says go OSU, he's not talking about Oregon State University. He's talking about Ohio State University, most likely. Gene Krebs, you live out near Miami, which had some outbreaks early on when those students came back, when they first came back. I think it's more under control now, but is this a good decision to have these folks playing football?
Short term, undoubtedly, they need the money. Long term, one of the holdups has been at the federal level to pass the next level of COVID relief has been dealing with the liability issues. And as long as Ohio State plays only in Ohio, they're covered by the current legislation just passed in Ohio to deal with that. But the moment they travel outside the state, now they're coming into the federal jurisdiction. And now you may see, I think, unfortunately, players who contract COVID, coaches, staff, may open up Ohio State for liability later on, especially as they go through a level of different things. So my fear is that this is just going to open up a Pandora's box. I understand why they did it. I think they may have bitten off more than they could chew.
Of course, Joe Mas, you know, we've been watching football now for a couple of weeks. The NFL started last week, college football started last week. We've seen the NBA and the NHL conduct their playoffs pretty incident-free. Granted, these are professionals, except for the college football folks last week. They're in a bubble, they're getting paid to be there. College athletes are not. What are your thoughts on resuming the football season?
Yeah, a couple of things, and one of them is that what we have seen is that we have seen the COVID kind of blow up in some educational institutions. I'm thinking of University of Alabama and other places, so that is already a vulnerable place. And I'm kind of wondering, how are they going to keep the players apart from the students? I mean, if I had a quarterback like we do at Ohio State, man, I certainly want to keep him in some sort of a bubble.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's a problem. But what I really mourn, and I've mentioned this on this program several times, is the fact that we have an inconsistent story. We have an inconsistent handling of the COVID-19. And I think that history will reflect on that. I think that will be how history will write about the COVID-19 for the next 100 years.
All right, I want to get to one.
We're unbelievably inconsistent in our approach.
Yeah. Real quick, our last topic, an independent investigation into how police officers conducted themselves during the George Floyd-inspired protest did not find much wrongdoing on the part of police. The law firm looking into police actions ruled on 22 incidents. Of those 22, it found one officer acted wrongly, 4 officers were exonerated, but most were inconclusive because of time constraints, lack of cooperation from officers and from witnesses. The mayor was less than satisfied.
I can tell you, I was surprised and in many cases angered at the results. Like all of you, I saw the photos, I saw the videos, and I heard from friends, colleagues, and neighbors about what occurred on our streets those first days of protest. The results from these investigations proved to me more clearly than ever before the need for police reform.
Joe Mas, not too long ago, I could see a politician taking that report and saying, you know, we looked into it, we couldn't find any wrongdoing by police, we can always improve, but we're with the police. That was not the tone the mayor took this time.
No,
and what do you think about it?
Yeah, it isn't the tone. And if you recall, I've also predicted that we are going to have some success in having oversight of the police as it goes on, I think over the next year or so. I did take a glance at the report, very, very long report, and it seemed detailed in that they identified people on videos and they may have interviewed some people, but also, you know, a lot of the body cams had been turned off. Some of the people didn't want to testify. It was an inconsistent result. And this happens in real life, by the way. Yeah. This is not uncommon, even investigating criminal cases or civil cases. So I'm not surprised necessarily, but certainly disappointed that there wasn't a more clear message that would have supported reform, which is, I think, the same thing that the mayor was saying.
Joe, would a civilian review board make that report any different, do you think?
Would a civilian review board make the report any different?
Yeah, more conclusive.
Oh, I think no. I'm not saying that the civilian review board is going to make a different kind of report. I'm thinking that the review board would take action and would challenge the police based on information brought before them, so that in fact it would be one layer up already from just a report from Baker and Hospital.
All right, let's get to our off-the-record final parting shots, and Joe Mas, we'll start with you.
Indeed. And Mike, in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, which started this month, I want to address my Latinx brothers and sisters. Compañeros, no se olviden de hacerse contribuidores al WOSU este otoño. Don't forget to become a sustainer at the WOSU.
All right. WOSU.org if you want to give. Gene Krebs, you're up next. Thank you, Joe.
With the recent House Bill 6 kerfuffle going on in the State House, what effectively has happened, the FBI has criminalized what's been long-standing accepted practices in the State House. This is going to have ramifications going down to a variety of venues, but I still have not yet seen the Democrats offer, who's serving in the House or Senate, offer any sort of coherent reform structure and reform proposals to deal with this.
And Julie Carr Smythe.
In Virginia, on the first day of early voting, we saw huge lines of people who are concerned about all of these things we talked about at the top of this broadcast, things like the service and what are those going to be, and things are changing so much. And early voting is probably going to be just as popular in Ohio. It starts on October 6th, right?
Yep.
7th. And I think that will probably be an option people choose given everything that's so uncertain right now.
Yeah, the basic advice is if you're going to vote early, vote early. If you're going to vote early. And at WOSU, we have a great new tool. We have our voter's guide, which tells you all about the candidates and the issues. But we also have an extended how to vote guide. It takes you through step by step how to get an absentee ballot, how to fill it out, how to mail it back. Once you get the ballot, how to fill that out, not who to vote for, but how to fill it out, how to get that back, how to track your ballot, all that information. It's a great tool, it's a how-to-vote tool. It's available at WOSU.org. For our panel and for our crew, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.